Morris online from New York to speak about to talk about the topic of innovation master plan and the net zero development practice with us. And today is a tough day to me because in the daytime I have more than 6 hours of workshop with a second generation group in Taichung area, and we have like 30 people in the classroom. We have a lot of discussion. So basically, I can say I'm exhausted. But no matter what, today's speech is very important to Taiwan. So this is the topic we designed for. We asked Langdon Morris to help us to present to our audience. So 创新的起点与净零发展的这个实务这个议题，那非常感谢我们 Langdon Morris 可以从纽约New York time is 8 o'clock in the morning， 纽约时间现在是早上8点的时间，他从纽约8点的时间来跟我们做这个演讲我们非常感谢 Langdon Morris。I am not going to talk too much about innovation, but I only simply explain that innovation is the combination word of lean innovation. Means the platform is basically focused on lean and innovation. So this is my best explanation for this platform. Today's topic, as I explained to all of you, Innovation Master Plan is a book. The book was translated and published in Taiwan on 2013. The book is already gone. You are not going to purchase the original version of the book already. So, but no matter what, Innovation Master Plan explains to you why do you have to innovate? How are you going to innovate? Who is your target of innovation? Your target customer of innovation. So from Innovation Master Plan to so-called net zero development practice, this is the topic that Langdon Morris will help us to deliver to us tonight. So I believe this is Langdon Morris' speech tonight. And then let me announce to all of you, 让我介绍给所有台湾的朋友，我们每个月we have one online seminar every month, once a month. So on 11th of July, we will have another topic. Speak of. I'm going to deliver the topic. 精实企业变革战略 How to develop your lean enterprise transformation strategy. So 精实企业变革战略这个议题，企业转型不行不转型不行这个议题，将会是我们7月11号的一个活动。Langdon Morris， 我跟 Langdon Morris 应该认识快20年，应该20年有了哈。我帮 Langdon Morris 翻译的第一本书在2009年，但是在那之前我们就讨论了非常多我们可以一起做的事情。我用中文快速的说明一下。我们希望连接美国的一些朋友包含到 Langdon Morris。We are going to have Langdon Morris from in the United States to help us maybe try to find international markets, and maybe in the longer run, in case Taiwan companies have to locate your new companies or office in the United States or nearby or even in the Europe, maybe Langdon Morris can help from his connection. OK， 所以我们一个目标等一下今天活动结束之后，我们会有一个这个questionnaire。这个 questionnaire 的用意在于说，请各位 回复一下，看看是不是在未来愿意有链接到这样一个资源，让我们共同来协助台湾的产业发展国际市场甚至于说未来有没有机会，有没有需要去落地到其他国家的厂办，甚至于到美国去 IPO 这些目标是我们一直在链接海外资源的一个目标。那我想现在已经是那个8:07了哈。我们现在是不是请 Kurt 用1-2分钟的时间来介绍一下我们的就是那个如何设定我们的Google Meeting 的一个字幕的部分。来 Kurt 麻烦你。
大家晚上好，那让我分享一下荧幕我将要协助就是各位在自己的 Google Meeting， 然后能够看看能不能就是设定一个字幕，这个字幕包含了翻译的功能。请问各位看得到我的荧幕吗？看得到那如果各位看得到荧幕的话，在这个不论是手机或者是电脑的荧幕，或者是 iPad， 再点这个更多选项，然后按这个设定，然后这边会有一个选项叫做字幕，应该会看到有音讯、视讯、一般字幕跟回应。那你点到字幕的时候呢，这边会有所谓的会议语言。我们等一下的会议呢 ，Langdon Morris 会用英文，所以我们选的会是英文。那选了英文之后呢，在 Default 这边，在预设的这边翻译字幕会是关起来的。那请各位把它打开。那这边会有一个选项是中文的简体。那目前这边的话是一个 beta 版。那点完之后就可以直接按叉叉。那如果各位有顺利的设定完成之后呢，你会在你的左下角会看到有字幕。那等一下 Langdon Morris 在说话的时候可以协助各位更加参与到这个会议。那我把这个就是我把这个麦克风交还给 Langdon Morris. The screen is yours, so you can share your PowerPoint. Thank you.
Kurt 麻烦你等一下把一些简单的设定的方法把它传到那个对话窗可以吗？好，谢谢。Kurt, Langdon, now
yes,
it's your turn to share your screen.
Okay, great. Well, so first I'll start by saying thank you very much, Justin, for inviting me to spend the evening with you all. Very much looking forward to sharing some thoughts with you. And so thank you for spending this time with me. So I'm just going to share my screen. And Kurt, as I mentioned, I can no longer see your faces. So if there's any issues, you need to just let me know verbally. So do we see the title slide, Innovation for Taiwan? Is it showing okay?
Yes.
It's fine.
All right, perfect. So again, good evening, everyone. Pleasure to join you all. I'm sorry? What was that, Justin?
No problem. Good evening.
Okay. Great. So hang on, my computer just went through. There we go. So here's what we're going to talk about this evening. Innovation and net zero primarily, next steps as well. So the purpose of the evening for me, what I want to share with you is about innovation. So what do we mean by innovation? Well, innovation is new ideas, it's new products, it's new solutions, it's new services. And of course, the point of this is innovation is lots of things. Very often in the US, when we ask people what do they think about innovation or what do they mean by innovation, they hold up their smartphone. But innovation is much more than just technology. It's also new business models. It's exploring new markets. It's new thinking, new strategies, and most importantly, it's new value provided to customers. And the purpose of all of it is to create competitive advantage for your company. That's the goal. What we're going to focus on this evening are new markets and competitive advantage. These are the things that we're really focused on for this talk today. So we start with the question, why does innovation matter? Well, it matters because it's how we compete. So whether we're talking about candy bars or phones or home appliances or automobiles or airplanes or airlines, innovation is central to everything about competition in the marketplace. Here we have different forms of energy, and they're in competition with each other. Around the world, we're competing between Asia, North America, Europe, South Asia. Competition is everywhere, and innovation is what's driving it. So it doesn't matter what level you're talking about. If you're going to be in a competitive marketplace, you have to innovate. So the question that we're going to talk about today is, how do we manage innovation? What's the best way to do it? How can we gain competitive advantage? So let's talk a little bit about innovation. And we'll talk first about a case study. So this is a case study from Haier, which is just across the strait from you, of course, in mainland China. And the project that I'm going to share with you was done a couple of years ago in Shanghai for Haier. And it's a question about water heater design. And so I'm framing the case study as a question for you. Is a water heater design a technical problem, or is it a human problem? And this question comes up all the time in innovation, balancing the human aspect and the technological aspect. So another way to think of it is, when you buy a hot water heater, what do you care about? What is the customer thinking about? And you can see in the upper left-hand corner, Meerkat Works is our partner in Shanghai, and this was their project that they worked on. So what do you care about when you're buying a hot water heater? Well, you care about hot water for cooking. You care about hot water for bathing your children. And one of the things that you notice if you look in many houses is that the shower heads, so this is a photograph of the shower head in the bathroom, and you can see all this mineral deposit, all this, it's called scaling on the shower head. And when you look at that, you don't feel that comfortable, because it means that the water quality is not very high. So what the Meerkat team did when they were researching this project for Haier was they went and they talked to people. They talked to people to find out what they were interested in, what they were concerned about. And of course, as you know, in China, there has been a building boom going on for many decades. So lots of new houses, and people would have to buy the hot water heater for their new home. And so this was the market that Haier was interested in. And when Meerkat interviewed people, they discovered that there was a concern about the quality of the water. And when they looked at these are pictures of the shower heads that they saw in people's houses, they realized that it was a serious problem. So the baby drinks water when you're in the bath. When the baby's in the bath, naturally it's drinking water. Is the water safe? How does the water feel on your skin? And the skin drinks water. Is it healthy? So this led them to understand that the hot water heater design for Haier was about the purity of the water. It had nothing to do with the temperature of the water. So creating a successful hot water heater product, depended on understanding what the customer was interested in. And the customer was interested in the safety of the water and the purity of the water. So there's a picture of the unit as installed, and you can see the product combined fresh water with purification and anti-scaling. That's that mineral deposit that we saw in those shower heads. And the result of the work was a very successful hot water heater design. And what that tells us is that, first of all, innovation in this case, and in every case, is a human problem. We have to understand the needs and requirements of the customer. And this led the Haier team to create a completely different product than they were envisioning. Now I want to give you another case study as well. This is called Fridge Pack. This is about Coca-Cola. So it's about Coca-Cola, but it's also about aluminum. So here you have rolls of aluminum in an aluminum mill, and the aluminum company was interested in selling more aluminum, naturally. That's what all companies are trying to do. And they wanted to research what markets could they expand? Where could they add more customers for aluminum? And so this is, again, another research project, another customer research project. And here are photos of many different products that use aluminum. So automobile bodies, electrical cables, building construction, aircraft. And then there's the Coke can down on the bottom. And what they discovered through the research was that the aluminum company didn't have much ability to influence most of these products, but perhaps they could influence the market for these beverages. And so that's what they set about to do, to figure out essentially how to persuade people to drink more products in cans. And at the time, you may remember this from your own experience. At the time when you bought a 6-pack of any canned product, it came with this plastic container. So they were all embedded in the plastic container. And it was always difficult to manage. And in talking to consumers, they discovered that the standard for what was easy to manage was an egg carton. And so here we are, again, doing consumer research, trying to find out what's important to the consumer, and discovering that a barrier to consuming the product is the way that it's packaged. And so we have on the left side the difficult packaging, and on the right side the easy packaging. And so the designers said to themselves, well, how can we make the packaging for our beverage as easy as an egg carton? And what did they do? Well, they created a prototype that looked like the model. So there you can see on the right, they literally wrapped a bunch of tape around a bunch of cans and put it in the refrigerator. And yes, of course, it says on the bottom, we don't mind copying. Innovation is all about stealing great ideas from other industries and other companies. So that was the prototype, and that was the finished product. It's called a fridge pack. You probably have one or many in your house. But at the time, it didn't exist. So it was a new invention to solve the problem of how to make it easy for people to get refrigerated beverages in the can. So this is the result. The invention was called fridge pack. It happened a few years ago. And so this was a concept. The aluminum company was very interested, and the researchers had lots of evidence. And they went to the Coca-Cola company and they said, we have this idea for packaging. We think it'll sell a lot more Coca-Cola. Will you try it? So here we have the part of innovation where you always have to sell the idea to someone to say, you know, this is something new. Would you like to try it? And the answer from the Coca-Cola company was no. And no, we're very happy with our packaging. We're not interested in your box. We don't understand your box. What we're doing works just fine. So here we have another aspect of innovation, which probably you've experienced as well, which is that people resist new ideas. Very often they're like, no, I like what I'm doing. What I'm doing is working fine. Don't bother me. Well, the researchers went around the world and they talked to various companies, and they discovered a company in Australia that was willing to try this idea. This was the Australian company of Coca-Cola, which was independent from the US, so they could do what they wanted. And they thought, well, that's a pretty interesting idea. So let's give it a try. So this is what happened to Coca-Cola sales in Australia. Here's their trend line. This is how sales were going. And then they introduced the fridge pack, this new packaging, and sales went up. Well, this was very interesting for all of the Coca-Cola companies around the world. But in the US, they expected, well, yeah, it's going up, but it's just temporary. That's what the expected result was, based on their expectations in the US. But in fact, sales stayed higher. It created a net increase in Coca-Cola revenue in Australia. And of course, that was very interesting. Anything that drives increased sales, no matter what, that's going to get people's attention. So what did they do? They flew down to Australia and said, wait a minute, this is great. We have to do this worldwide. The net result for Alcoa, the aluminum company, was $1 billion of additional sales when this idea had been rolled out to the world. So if you remember, I started the case study with the photos of the rolls of aluminum in the aluminum mill. And after all this research, we discovered a problem that customers had with the packaging of our product. And fixing the packaging enabled Alcoa to sell $1 billion more of aluminum. And of course, Coca-Cola was very happy because they sold more Coca-Cola. And so now when you go into any grocery store in the US and possibly around the world, you see these boxes. Well, now you know the story of how these boxes were invented. Someone did consumer research and discovered that the packaging of the product was a problem. So now we have these giant displays, hundreds and hundreds of boxes, and they fly off the shelves because people really like them. They solve a problem. Now, interesting thing here, think about the story. The aluminum company wants to sell more aluminum. Coca-Cola wants to sell more Coca-Cola. And the solution is a cardboard box. The solution to selling more aluminum and more beverage was to change the packaging. So this talks about how in business, you're always dealing with partnerships. So you have the packaging company, the aluminum company, and the beverage company all working together to create value for the customers, to make the customer's life easier. So this was called the fridge pack, and now other companies in other industries are copying the idea. I mentioned earlier about copying. So we copied the egg carton for the fridge pack, and now other companies are copying the fridge pack idea. And as you can see, they're even using the fridge pack name. So fridge pack is now a generic name for any packaging which is convenient for the customer, which is easy for the customer, easy to get into and easy to store in the refrigerator. So this research has led to an entire new concept of how food is packaged and distributed. And here you see 2 bottles of Heinz ketchup, but look at the one on the left. Look what it says. It says it fits in the door of your refrigerator. So now packaging companies and product companies are changing the way they think about packaging to make it easy for the customer. So this has completely changed how food packaging is done around the world. This one discovery about Coca-Cola and the ease of accessing the product. So your company may or may not be in a consumer marketplace like this, but the point is the customer has information and experiences, and when we gain access to that knowledge, we can create successful innovations. So let me summarize the insights from both of these case studies. What do you need to know, in other words? So the Haier case, the result was a great high-end brand with a high selling price, average 5,000 RMB. Product sold more than 10,000 units in the first 3 months. It established a brand identity for Haier in this space, so it blocked the competitors, opened up a new pathway for follow-up products, enabled a new business model. And number 5 is the most important. The value proposition of the product has nothing to do with what the product is supposed to do. It's not about heating the water. It's about purifying the water. Haier would have never, ever discovered that if they had not done this consumer research. So we think about what we call the value ladder, and we think about a product at the bottom end, which is basic, and a product at the top end, which is differentiated or transformed. And so what Haier was able to do from this research was to create a transformed value proposition. And as you can see, that creates a loyal partnership between the company and the customer, because the company is meeting a problem that customers have that no other vendor was able to meet. So the value ladder is one of our important and useful tools when we're doing innovation work, trying to understand the structure of the market. Now, there's some markets where basic value is the correct value proposition. I'm not saying that all products should aim for transformed value. But as a product company, you have to understand where is the market for basic value, where is the market for transformed value, what's the cost point, and what are the features that are important for the market in each level. So when you buy a hot water heater, what do you care about? You care about how you use it. You're using it for cooking, cleaning, and bathing. You care that it's hot. But the meaning, the most important aspect of the case study is that it's about the purity of the water. That's the differentiation. So at the very beginning, I talked about innovation as strategic competitive advantage. And in this case, what we see is that purity, the understanding of the importance of purity, provides the meaning, and that's what provides the strategic competitive advantage. So Haier could have gone out and built a great hot water heater that makes very, very hot water very quickly. But if they had not understood the importance of purity, they would not have had a product as successful as they did. Now, moving on to the fridge pack case study. So yes, we have to do research. Research is critical to understanding customer needs. So what do you know? How do you make it hard? Well, the old packaging was hard, difficult to use. The new packaging was easy to use. Can you persuade someone to try it? They had to go all the way to Australia because of resistance to change. And what's the impact? Well, the impact was significant. And yes, the innovation comes about as a result of the partnership. So end user knowledge, absolutely mandatory. You cannot assume that you know what the problem is. The goal is to make it easy. You have to test it. And this created a new consumer product category, and you needed your partners to execute. So those are some of the insights from that case study. Now, stepping back a little bit, what that tells us is that innovation is a combination of art and science. On the science side, it has to be structured and rigorous. There has to be a process and a method and a plan. Earlier, Justin mentioned about the Innovation Master Plan as a framework, and I'll talk about that in a few minutes. But as you can see, it's also an art form because it's about discovery. When you start this type of research, you don't know what you're going to find. So you have to be willing to explore. You have to be curious. You have to follow your intuition. And you have to develop your expertise. So innovation among all business practices is unique in the sense that it combines the science and the art into one. And from our perspective, the only way to be successful is to do it in a systematic way. Innovation has to be a system. And of course, as a system, it's got tools. So what are some of those tools? Well, here are some examples. One of the most important tools is design thinking. You've probably heard about design thinking. It's a technique that was developed in Silicon Valley at Stanford University, and it's now used all over the world to discover new possibilities. So both the Haier case study and the fridge pack case study, what did the researchers do? They practiced design thinking. Design thinking enabled them to discover these important insights that led to the success of the product. Sometimes we also call it ethnographic research. So we use this little character here to represent what's outside. So what's outside is the stuff that we can see easily, stuff we all know. It's not that interesting. It's obvious to everyone. But what we want to discover through design thinking and ethnographic research is the stuff that no one knows. Because again, when we're looking for competitive advantage, if we can discover something that no one else knows, then we can create that advantage because it's going to be cool. The customer is going to say, wow, that's really interesting. And of course, that knowledge, well, it's tacit or it's hidden. So we have to dig for it. We have to find it. We have to use our research skill to discover the new. And with the fridge pack case study, that's exactly what they did. $1 billion more annual sales of aluminum and many billions of dollars for Coca-Cola and the other beverage companies. Another powerful tool is TREES. This is a Russian acronym for a systematic discovery of new possibilities. So we use design thinking in the research stage to conceptualize. We use TREES to discover engineering solutions. So TREES is a hierarchical system, brilliant system developed by Altschuler in Russia to help us discover possibilities for engineering new products. So in the Haier case study, they use design thinking to discover the needs of the customer, and they use trees to engineer the actual product to achieve the threefold purity. Another important innovation tool is business model innovation. How are you going to go to the market? And all the logos here on the screen show companies that innovated their business model. They structured their business in a different way than anyone had structured before, and that enabled them to become very, very successful. So business model innovation is a very, very important innovation technique. And one of the reasons that it's so attractive is because it can be inexpensive. Business model innovation is about how you present your product to the customer, how you present your service to the customer. And it doesn't have to be expensive at all. It can be one of the least expensive and most beneficial ways to innovate. Another tool that we use is the adoption tool. So this bell curve represents adoption in the market. So what I'm doing now is I'm just sharing some tools and concepts to give you an idea of some of the things that you need to be thinking about when you think about systematic innovation. So the bell curve model, the adoption model, says that the mainstream market is the fat part of the bell, but we can divide the bell into these segments, and we see that the innovators are the people early on who will try a new idea. So in the fridge pack case, the innovators were the ones from Australia. They said, yeah, we'll try that. We think it has possibility. The rest of the world's Coca-Cola bottlers were not interested. In America, Coca-Cola was not interested. But the innovators, in this case, were in Australia, and they said, yeah, we'll try it. And of course, it was so successful that they all adopted it very quickly. So this model says how new ideas come into society. So there are innovators and then early adopters and then the majority. And what we discover about companies is that when they market to innovators and early adopters, they have to completely change their approach to marketing when they want to get into the majority of the marketplace. So the gap between the early adopters and the majority is called the chasm. So there's a very important scholarly work that says, how do we get into the mainstream market? So one of the things that Justin mentioned early on was that we're available to help Taiwanese companies that want to come to America. And what we will be doing is helping you to cross the chasm, to cross from the small number of early adopter customers to create a company or a product or a service that can really address the mainstream market, which is, of course, where the big opportunities are. So the way you market on the left side of the chasm is completely different from the way you market on the right side of the chasm. So your marketing has to change. So those were just some of the tools that we use. Now I want to talk a little bit about the Innovation Master Plan. So Justin, Kurt, I've been talking for a while. Are we still okay? Is everything going all right?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
no problem.
Okay, very good. So I'll continue now. So as Justin mentioned at the beginning, the Innovation Master Plan is our conceptual framework for how to manage innovation in a systematic manner. As I said, it's one part science, one part art, and the Innovation Master Plan is our system for how to merge them together. So I wrote a book on that topic with that title some years ago. Justin translated it into Chinese, and we released it in Taiwan about 10 years ago. So this is a technique which is now used all around the world, and it's a standard tool that's being taught in business schools as well as used in corporations. So I just want to introduce it to you here so you understand sort of the basic thinking behind the master plan framework. So here you can see we're teaching it. This was in China, in Shanghai, a couple years ago. So we have a Chinese version of the master plan. So that diagram, I'll explain in a little bit more detail in a minute, but you can see we have a very detailed set of tools now in Chinese. Here we have the same thing, but on a whiteboard in America. So tools being used all over the world. And here we have a chart also in America on a whiteboard where a company is using this framework, they're adopting this framework, and they're talking about, in this case, how do we bring this way of thinking into our organization? So here's the Chinese version of the plan. And what you see is the horizontal bands. These are the different aspects of innovation that we have to focus on. These are the areas that we need to do work in order to create a really viable, meaningful innovation system. Now, for large companies, you'll follow a pattern or process pretty much like this. Smaller companies will do a much simpler version of this, but you'll have to address the same basic questions in each case. And the goal is defined in the middle of the chart, and that is the goal of becoming a proficient innovator, being able to create products like the higher water heater or like the fridge pack on a regular basis, bringing that kind of innovation and success to your customers, whether those customers are in Taiwan, whether they're in Asia, North America, or Europe, it doesn't matter. Customers all around the world now have the same mindset, the same set of expectations. They expect innovation from companies, and they reward companies that innovate by becoming loyal customers. So the master plan framework looks like this. So the top level is the strategy level. Why are we doing this? Well, we're doing this to create competitive advantage, but we need to understand the structure of the marketplace. So we begin a master plan project by defining the strategy very clearly. The second step of our process is to determine what needs to be in our innovation portfolio. So what are our targets? What are our goals? What markets do we want to compete in? What portfolio should we create in order to address the different segments and levels of the marketplace? And then the middle layer, the one that I showed you, the red arrow on the previous slide, that's the process layer. So how do we do this? What do we do? Well, we do design thinking, we do trees, we use the adoption model, we use a whole set of tools to discover new possibilities, to engineer them, to bring them successfully to the marketplace, and then to transition in the marketplace from the early adopters, the first customers, to the mainstream market, which is where the real business opportunities will be found. So we have to do this rigorously. And of course, one of the questions that's always in the back of our mind is innovation requires investment. So we're risking capital. So how can we make sure that we're risking our capital in an appropriate way? How can we make sure that our investments are going to make sense? Because we have lots of ways to use capital. We could use capital to expand our production. We could use capital to expand into new markets. But if we're going to invest in innovation, we have to be confident that innovation is going to achieve a return. So our innovation portfolio and our process are really focused on managing risk and achieving success in the marketplace. Now, there's more elements to the framework, so perhaps you're noticing in English we have what we call six important questions. Why, what, and how, you see here on the screen. But the next question is about who? Well, of course, it's about the people, because it's the people who create innovations. Right now, we can't count on ChatGPT to come up with new ideas for us. We have to do that ourselves. Right? So how do we engage people in the innovation process? How do we teach them? How do we help them understand? How do we make them proficient as innovators? And by the way, what tools do they need? So that's our where question. You know, what's our tooling? How are we using virtual tools? How are we using research? How are we using meeting tools? How are we doing workshops? How are we interacting with customers? These are all part of our toolkit. Now, if you remember your English questions, or probably the same questions in Chinese, the last in our series is when. But the when question is the easiest of all to answer, because the answer to when is now. You have to start innovating now. There's an old Chinese adage, perhaps you're familiar with it, it's about gardening. It says, when is the best time to plant a tree? And the answer is, well, 10 or 20 years ago is the best time to plant a tree. So what's the second best time to plant a tree? And the answer, of course, is right now. So when should you start your innovation process? When should you develop your innovation master plan? The answer is right now, because you have to be ready to compete in a very, very dynamic market. And innovation is a very important tool for that. So what we're talking about is an innovation system. We're talking about approaching innovation as a system, managing it as a system. So I'm showing you now the same slide that I showed you at the very, very beginning. And now perhaps you see it a little bit differently, having looked at the case studies and having looked at the Innovation Master Plan framework for a few minutes. Innovation is all of these things. It's ideas that we implement, it's products, it's solutions, it's services. Oops, I'm getting an echo. Are you hearing?
Can you unmute yourself? I just muted everybody. Yeah, Langdon, you can unmute yourself.
Okay, how's that? Am I good now?
Yeah, you're good now.
Yes.
All right, so I'll go back to sharing. All right, continuing on. So innovation is all these things.
Please, yes, okay.
Are we all right now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. New markets, new thinking, new strategies, new value, and strategic competitive advantage. So think about the two case studies. The Hire case study, what did Hire do? Hire created a competitive advantage by discovering the needs of its customers, the needs that no one had recognized and understood before. So it did provide new value to the customers. It enabled a new business model for the company through the new product. So very successful combination of these value elements. Same with the fridge pack. Strategic competitive advantage actually defined a new category of product packaging. So again, new markets, strategic competitive advantage, that's what we're after with innovation. I want to spend a few minutes talking about net zero and ESG. Justin has told me that that's a very important topic in Taiwan for Taiwanese companies. It's a very important topic all around the world, in fact, of course. And it's an example of innovation as well, because what are we doing when we're striving to achieve net zero in our energy systems? Well, we're innovating in how we produce and consume energy. And ESG is innovating in how we run our businesses. So these are very specific and very important examples of innovation being applied to solve very important problems for society on a global basis. So my work in net zero is described in this book, which I co-wrote with Farah Naz. Farah is based in Dubai. We wrote a book, it's about 400 pages long, and it includes more than 113 examples. So I'm going to just share with you now a few highlights from that book. So what's the problem? This is not news at all. You all know about this. The problem is there's too much carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. This is what it looks like. So over the last 260 years, this is how humans have been putting carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. You can see from the colors the different marketplaces, the different places where CO2 is coming from. Around 1900, scientists began to recognize that putting more carbon dioxide in the atmosphere could warm the planet. So now, more than 100 years later, what they forecast in 1900 is coming true. So there's a lovely picture of Miami. That's South Beach, the famous Miami Beach. It's quite beautiful. But Miami floods now almost every month because the ocean levels are rising. So this girl doesn't have to walk down to the beach. She can just walk outside her building and put her toes in the water. So this is one of the consequences of too much carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. By 2200, it's quite possible, if the way things are going now continues, that Miami will be underwater completely. Possibly the city will not be habitable. It looks like about half of Florida might disappear. And of course, this is just an example. It's not just Florida. It's all over the world. So here's an example of flooding across the strait in China. Don't think that house is going to be ready for living anytime soon, unfortunately. So low-lying cities all around the world are getting wetter and hotter. So Hong Kong across the strait from you, Amsterdam, yes, Taipei, Shanghai, Miami, etc. All these cities are dealing with the consequences of rising sea levels, bigger storms, higher temperatures. Other places, on the other hand, are getting drier and hotter. So the picture in the background is the Aral Sea. As you can see, it's a sea without much water in it. These boats are useless because the sea turned into a small lake because it dried up. The war in Syria, caused by global warming, war in Sudan, heat waves in Paris, heat waves in Phoenix, many people dying because the heat was just too much. So serious global consequences of climate change. So what are we doing about it? Well, all around the world, you can see their initiatives. So this is a net zero industry act has been enacted in Europe with the goal to renew Europe. So this is an example of how the governance of the city, the laws of the city are being changed to move towards a net zero situation to counteract climate change, to counteract global warming. Another theme for net zero is how we design our buildings and how we design our cities. So urban design and master planning. So here are three examples. The one on the left is a hotel in Vienna, and you can see it's a green hotel. The whole building is covered with greenery. It's quite beautiful. The photograph in the center is a building in Dubai, which uses very smart architecture to reduce the amount of electricity that's needed to keep the building cool and comfortable. And on the right side, we have some cactuses in Arizona. And the reason I'm showing you those is because cactuses, you can see they have the ribs on them that create the shadows. Well, that's a strategy, that's a biological strategy for self-cooling, because the shadows enable the cactus to not get so hot during the day. So it creates places of sunshine and places of shadow. So it's the cactus is self-shading that protects it from overheating. And that's another tool in innovation, by the way, that copying nature is a technique which we call biomimicry. So how can we use shading as we learn from a cactus and we apply it to the building? And that's exactly what the middle photograph shows. The middle photograph is a self-shading building using some of the same techniques as the cactus. So learning from nature how to solve problems, biomimicry is a powerful tool for innovators. There you can see a close-up of the cactus, and you can see the ribs create shading, and the shading helps it control its temperature. It also creates little tiny air currents, which also help to cool the cactus during the hot summer days in Arizona. Another theme area for us to research, another area for us to create innovations is the infrastructure of the city. So this is my local garbage dump. And as you can see, we're throwing away tons and tons of stuff. We're creating a huge amount of waste. But we don't have to. We can create buildings which are much more efficient, which create much less waste. So this is a building in UAE, the United Arab Emirates. And as you can see, it's a beautiful, beautiful building. The reason it's interesting for us is because the building was designed with energy engineering in mind. In fact, my co-author of the Net Zero City book, Farah Naz, she's an energy engineer based in Dubai, and she helped to engineer this to be a net zero building. So not only is it beautiful architecturally, but as you can see, it's in the middle of the desert, but it's a net zero building because it was engineered to be a net zero building. So very smart design leading to not only something which is beautiful, but with something which is highly functional. So globally, over the next probably 20 years, we're going to invest around $100 trillion in the net zero transition. This is a photograph of a solar power station, a solar power station in California, I actually took this picture from an airplane, believe it or not. This thing is so big that you're flying over at 35,000 feet and you can see it clearly. It's huge. It's creating a huge amount of electricity, and obviously it's using the sun to do it. Now, $100 trillion is an enormous figure. No one actually knows exactly what that means because it's such a big number. But on a global basis, we're going to invest roughly that much to eliminate fossil fuels and shift to a solar, wind, and other sources of non-fossil fuel energy for civilization. So it's a big shift, a huge business opportunity. As you know, the Chinese across the strait are the world's #1 provider of solar panels. But many of the technologies that they require are coming from Taiwan because of your advanced semiconductor manufacturing. So as Farah and I were writing the book and thinking about this transition, what we wanted to do in the book was to define a process that a city could use to get from wherever it is now to net zero by 2032. So if you see on the right side of the screen, it says 2032, and the red dot at the bottom means net zero, meaning no CO2 emissions. And so Farah, being an engineer, said, well, we have to design a process. How are we going to get there? So the 4 steps of the process that we articulate, and this is all in the book. Number 1, assess, figure it out. What do we need to do? Number 2, act, prototype, test. Number 3, accelerate, take our tests and make them broad. And step 4, achieve net zero. So I thought about the Innovation Master Plan framework, and I thought about our work in net zero, and I realized that we could apply the same type of thinking to the net zero problem as we applied in creating the Innovation Master Plan framework. So we created a framework, and as you can see, it looks very much like the Innovation Master Plan because we're using the same logic of horizontal bands defining specific areas of work. So what I'm showing you now is a conceptual model, a conceptual diagram of what any city could do to achieve net zero. And the red line that starts high on the left and goes down to the bottom right, that's intended to describe the CO2 emissions. So yes, we get to net zero. And again, the point is not the specifics of the map, although the map could be interesting for you. And the book has a website, and you can go and download this if you like it. I'll show you the URL in a couple minutes. But the point is that we have a specific plan. The point is that we're clear about what we're doing. We know what our goal is, and we're organizing our actions based on a very specific framework and methodology. So we're not just randomly searching for ideas. We're being very focused. Again, as I talked about with the Innovation Master Plan, it's combining the art and the science together. It's the intuitive part together with the rigor. That's what enables us to achieve these important goals, these transformative goals. So I want to give you a case study now about an organization that was interested in net zero for obvious reasons. The organization is Total Energies. That's the big French oil company, sixth largest oil company in the world, about $250 billion in annual revenues. So starting in about 2010, they hired our firm, Innovation Labs, to start to work with their senior executives to help them think about the future of the energy industry. So every year we would work with 50 to 100 of their executives. So over the course of about 10 years, we worked with nearly 1,000 Total executives to help them understand how the world of energy was changing. So what is the future of the energy industry? Well, so we have wind power and power lines in the upper left. We have an oil refinery in the upper right. We have an oil drilling rig in the lower left, and we have a wind farm in the lower right. What's the future of the energy industry? Well, of course, if you're a company like Total, you have to have a handle on it. You have to understand the investments that an energy company is making they're investing billions of dollars today, and they expect a return on that investment for decades and decades to come. So long-range thinking is very, very important for them. And so knowing that the energy industry was in flux, knowing that global warming is starting to be a serious problem, and that climate legislation is coming, that laws to limit the use of fossil fuels are coming. An energy company has to be prepared. So this is a story about thinking ahead about how a company in the energy industry or in whatever industry you're in can think about the future and be prepared for change. So what do? Well, we can't predict exactly what's going to happen. So our technique, the technique that we taught the Total executive, was to model possible futures, what might happen, so that we can be better prepared for what will happen. And the technique that we use is called scenario planning. So we led scenario planning exercises, as I said, for about 1,000 Total Energies executives over the course of many years. And so the interesting thing is these workshops look just like design thinking, because in fact, it is design thinking. We're applying the design thinking toolkit to understanding the future of the industry. And the energy industry is, of course, important for the world. So it's not just the energy industry, it's really understanding the future of the economy. So we did this all over the world. Here was a workshop we did in the US. Here was a workshop we did in Hong Kong. So the setting was different. The tools were a little bit different, but the questions we raised were the same. And what I'm wanting you to get from these photographs is the level of engagement that these people had. They were thinking about the future of their company, thinking about the future of their industry, and doing it in a way that they found really, really interesting and very, really productive. So scenario planning, the photograph on the screen shows on the right side what they're doing. They're actually thinking about possibilities. So the 2x2 matrix, each quadrant of that diagram shows a completely different possibility for the future. So they're not trying to predict exactly what's going to happen. They're trying to understand what might happen. And on the left, you can see the executives from Total are from all over the world. So people from all continents working in a global oil company coming together, learning from each other, sharing information, sharing knowledge, and creating a vision of the future, a vision of possible futures. So the outcomes of this project, well, we trained about 1,000 of their senior executives. And what did they do? Well, they started to shift their innovation investments. So Total was the first global oil companies that really understood renewables and began to shift heavily into renewables. So they were the first to really move their business model. They started to develop a new business model around renewable energy. So today they're still a major oil company, but they have a significant investment in future energy because they know that over the next 20 years, they will have to completely shift the structure of their business. So the work that we did led to corporate level scenario planning. So at the most senior level of the company, they started to understand these questions. And that led the entire organization to what we say a deep understanding of the patterns of change in society. So here we have influence at the most strategic level. If you remember the Innovation Master Plan framework, we have the strategy at the top and then the portfolio second. So they shifted their strategy and they started to develop a new portfolio. And of course, this will play out for the company over the course of many years. But they started early, and that gives them a significant competitive advantage. So if you go to their website now, and you can see I have the URL there at the bottom of the screen. If you go to their website, this is where they describe their sustainability approach. So they understand that they're shifting to a new business model, a new business structure, and they're putting out a lot of information, of course, because it's very good publicity for the company. The other case study I want to share with you around net zero and ESG is how you design and manage this transition. That's my question. And the answer that I'm suggesting is you need to have the data. So if your company is interested in net zero or your city is interested in net zero, in order to make a sound strategic decision, you have to assemble the data and analyze the data. So this became a question that I got interested in as I was working on the Net Zero City book. And we started to partner with a company called Modern, the Modern Data Company. And we developed a package of solutions called Net Zero Urban Data Science to help organizations, cities, companies, even countries to manage the process of making the net zero transition. So in a sense, net zero and ESG become part of your master plan. And of course, if you think about ESG, and if you're not familiar with that, by the way, it stands for environmental, social, and governance. So this is a way to think about the leadership and the governance of an organization, whether it's a small company or a big company, doesn't matter. The underlying notion is that we have to think about the environment. So every company, every city is responsible for their part of the global environment. We all have to move towards a net zero philosophy and net zero practices. Socially, we have to do this in a way which is fair for everyone. And we have to bring in the appropriate governance to make sure that the way we're leading our organizations makes sense for the future. So ESG is now an important concept for how we manage corporations in the world. So think about the three topics that we've been talking about for the last hour. So innovation is essential for competitive advantage. You have to innovate or you don't survive. You remember the slides that I showed at the very beginning, from the candy bar to the aircraft to the automobile. Innovation is the basis of competition. So innovation is essential. What we're talking about here is innovation as net zero, innovation in terms of how we manage energy in the organization, and innovation as pursuing ESG, I should say, pursuing ESG as an innovation process. So using innovation to define our ESG processes. So in a sense, all three of these fit together. There are three different perspectives on the same question, and all should be reflected in your organization's innovation master plan. Now, I mentioned earlier when I showed you the chart of the innovation master plan that chart was designed for large companies. A much, much simpler version would be appropriate for a smaller company, but the questions are the same. The questions you have to ask are the same questions. What is our strategic goal? Where are we making our investments? What's our innovation process? How do we engage our people? And what's our tooling? So whether you're the biggest company in the world or you're a startup of 10 people, those are questions you need to ask. A large company will involve lots of people in these conversations. A small company, one or two people could think about it. But thinking about it is what's important, because thinking about it enables you to move from random innovation to systematic innovation, and that's what we're talking about. That's key to success. So a few next steps. I'm going to mention this, and then I think, Justin, probably you'll want to elaborate further. So I'll show the slides and talk about them a little bit, and then I can show them again if you want to go back, and also if you want to talk about them in Chinese. So I'm here to support the Taiwan Innovation Association. And as Justin mentioned, I and colleagues here in the US and in Europe are very interested to help Taiwanese companies to come to the US, to come to North America, to come to Europe, and to do that successfully. The association has its mission to help Taiwanese companies innovate. And as I talked about, it's not just products, it's also services and business models. To find new global markets, and that's an area where we may be able to help you. To find global business partners, even locating offices or factories, and possibly even raising capital. So these are the actions that we're suggesting that you should consider. We'd like you to sign up as a member of the association. We'll be happy to work with you if you'd like help preparing an innovation master plan. Justin is very expert in this, so he can work with you directly there in Taiwan. The Taiwan Innovation Association team can work with you, and we can work with you if you need our help as well. We have an online innovation course that's 25 hours long. We recommend that 5 to 10 people in your organization take the course, and we're here to help you go global. So I think that's my last slide, other than saying thank you. So thank you very much for listening to me for the last hour. I hope you found my comments interesting. I know we have time for questions, but Justin, I'm going to go back 2 slides and see if you wanted to add anything, either in English or if you prefer in Chinese. So I hand it over to you.
Okay. Please give Langdon Morris a big applause. Maybe from the bottom of the screen, you can find some big applause pictures. Please say thank you to Langdon Morris with many things. And let me simply use Chinese to deliver some introduction. 请问一下，有朋友举手要提问吗？直接开麦克风没问题。请问有吗 ？Herman 方？请问 Herman 在吗？
没有，是要按那个赞的符号。结果按错了
啊，没关系，没关系，
抱歉，消不掉。
没问题，没问题。好，我想let me use Chinese to introduce the system that I am Langdon Morris try to develop in Taiwan and link Taiwan with the United States with my friends in the United States。我直接这样讲哈，其实因为今天说实在话，真的我有点过度忙碌了。那今天在做introduction 的时候，我忘了讲这一件事情是，基本上我过去在美国是学机械航空的，然后后来是在美国福特汽车工作。那有一个机缘就是说认识的 Langdon Morris， 我可以说 Langdon Morris 是我在创新领域的 mentor 就是我的创新领域的导师所以基本上。尤其是一开始简介的时候，我就说过，Langdon Morris 他在创新的领域是非常扎实的。如果各位朋友有兴趣，可以从那个 Amazon 的 Books， 从美国的 Amazon Books 的系统去查查看他的书籍有多少，可能至少30-40本在那边。在最近他出版的书籍叫做 Hello Future 2035。就是已经从 Net Zero City 这一个主题谈到了未来这个世界应该会如何演变，期待如何演变的一个主题。所以基本上在这个过程当中，我们当然非常期望就好像目前 Langdon Morris 他已经放在荧幕上面的Innovate in Product Service Business Model。其实什么是 Business Model？像今天我在二代会台中的 G2 二代会的活动里面，我也再三强调，等一下我会秀3页简报，用中文来秀3页简报，跟各位说明一下我们在看的一个台湾现在最需要的一个工作是什么。那我直接用 Peter Drucker 所曾经讲过的一句话来诠释 innovation 的重要性 ，Innovate or die， 创新或灭亡。所以在这个过程当中，台湾其实大部分的产业都已经落入到一个现象，就是因为过去多年来，说真的就是反正也不是太强调创新研发的重要性，结果就已经陷入到一个非常严重的现象，就是销价竞争。那突然间糟糕了，今天的活动在台中实体活动30几位朋友在那边，说实在话。本来活动是4点要结束，结果拖延到5点50我才离开会场，所以回到家，我真的一点时间都没有空闲在准备今天我应该要怎么样去介绍 Langdon Morris 但关键是我们今天谈到一个话题，就是台湾的产业是不是台湾产业的产品价格是不是都已经到了天花板，甚至于价格有在往下掉的一个现象。再进一步的呢？再进一步的，那我们的成本又叠床架屋，逐渐在攀高，人力、人才、人工都已经完全欠缺的时候，请问我们该如何去因应未来？那如何在资源短缺之下去还能够做创新？说真的，非常非常重要。已经有一个朋友 Green Power 在那个我们的留言板那边有提到Langdon, you have 50 books on Amazon Books Store, something like that. 50 books.
15, yeah.
About 50.
No, more like 15.
more than 1.5, but we check on Amazon books. There are something like 40-something books.
Wow.
On Amazon bookstores.
I think some of them are translations of other languages.
Oh, maybe.
Yeah.
So no matter what, 我们为什么希望说能够链接美国的这些真正实务的创新大师来做这件事情，是我们真的非常期望说台湾能不能从代工跟设计代工转型往自主创新研发的路径走。好，如果继续做代工跟设计代工，那我们未来的路在哪里？所以等一下我就会开始秀一下我的3页简报。Langdon, I will show my 3 PowerPoint pages in Chinese, which I shown you when you were in Taipei. Okay?
Yeah, of course. Go ahead.
So I will translate those PowerPoints in English to you after the end of the school year. Okay?
Yeah, no
I'm
problem.
too busy.
Yeah.
Already.
Go ahead in Chinese. That's better for this. So no problem.
Okay. So my presentation is let me see. Okay, here. The first presentation that I'm going to show everyone. 第一页我想要跟各位报告的是这一页简报。说真的，这一页简报我很少公开在外面讲。这个是只有在一些企业内部我才会谈这一个议题。真正我们要谈创新的时候 ，in the United States and in the European countries, almost all businesses they see a business from outside in. 大部分的企业会从外部来看由外往内去看一个事业的一个发展。尤其是这里面，我常常会讲，今天白天的课程我也提到说，21世纪之后最厉害的公司绝对是苹果电脑。从21世纪初一直到今年才开始看到它开始衰败的一个现象。那2010年到2020年之间，我们又看到一个非常厉害的公司叫 Amazon。当然，突然之间因为 ChatGPT 上来了。Amazon 的 AWS 也逐渐被微软超越所以 Amazon 现在也稍微有一些衰退的一个现象。但是为什么我会讲说2010年到2020年真的是你看到 Amazon 的一个成长的趋势真的是有够厉害。基本上这些公司大概都是从外圈的商业模式创新开始思考。How business model innovation will change the world。这样子一句话，通常是 Langdon Morris 过去在教我们创新的时候非常重要的一句话。所以在商业模式创新的环境里面，尤其是在 digital transformation 的这个时代里面，在数位化转型时代里面，通常我们在思考一个商业模式创新的时候，里面就会包含了同时有一个实体的商品，同时有一个服务的创新。这个是数位化转型时代。After digital transformation era, we started to have the business innovation becomes a combination of product innovation and service innovation. 在这个圈子的里面，我们又看到说，好，为了要布局未来的商业模式，所以我必须要有这里的这一圈在谈的就是我的技术功能矩阵，我的专利检索，我的 patent and from patent analysis to patent mapping， 所以 how can I protect myself from the other competitors？ 所以这里就开始进入到专利的布局相关的一些工作。如果任何地方可能有专利侵权的部分，我就需要做 design around patent design around。在做 patent design around 的时候，其实就需要用到 trees 这个很好的工具。刚刚 Langdon Morris 也有谈到 trees。trees 通常在台湾除了它的英文专有名词是 trees 之外，基本上通常被称为叫做创新问题解决方法。通常我们碰到专利侵权了，我们就会跳进来用 trees， 可能会用到 trees 来做一些专利回避的工作。这个是欧美国家大部分的企业其实是由外往内在看这件事。 Amazon 从2010 Amazon the company of Amazon they have like 1,000 patents in 2010 but they have like 10,000 patents in 2020 so how come they apply for so many patents because they want to protect their business from outside in. They build a very strong wall to protect competitors to get in their business model. So 不管怎么样，这个是欧美国家他们的商业行为，通常都是这样子的思考模式。很抱歉，台湾大部分都是由内而外，甚至于我直接讲说，台湾大部分只专注在内圈的技术而已。专利布局够吗？甚至于台湾很多公司，大部分的人搞不好对专利都不是很清楚。保守型的申请叫做专利，我申请一个叫做新型专利能够保护我，不可能的事情啊！专利保护绝对是为了要去保护你自己，甚至于是攻城略地，这才是真正有效的一个专利。所以台湾只要碰到专利侵权的争议的时候，基本上从来没有赢过。今天当然线上我相信没有 HTC 的朋友了哈。HTC the company of HTC used to be get into the international 100 top branding companies in the world in 2011. HTC was the 98th top brand in the world. But however, when Apple try to get into lawsuit， 苹果电脑在大概2010到2011年的时候告苹果电脑告 HTC 20项专利。其实当我们看到那种新闻的时候，我们就知道说，哇，真的 HTC 手机部门可能就大事不妙啊，大概有这样一个逻辑现象。所以在这样的过程当中，当台湾的产业只看到这一圈，而没有从这一圈往外看，到底我的整体的布局是怎么布的时候，说真的是真的非常危险的一件事情。那我这里就举了一个案例哈，我在 Langdon Morris 来到台湾，我刚刚少讲了一件事 ，Langdon Morris 他在19th of March。台北有一个智慧城市论坛 Smart City Exploration， 同时有 Smart City Forum， 他是主论坛的演讲者，他在主论坛演讲 Net Zero City 这一个主题，同时他在3月20号也讲的Startup Innovation 的一个主题啊。那不管怎么样，我在3月18号、19号、20号在台北跟他聊的时候，我就有跟他谈到这件事情。Elon Musk 他绝对是一个天才等级的人，钢铁人。他可以从技术部分，各位不晓得有没有听过 Elon Musk 他的有人诠释 Elon Musk 的创新方法叫做 First Principle， 台湾翻译做第一性原理。所以他是技术能量很强的人，但是很抱歉，他同时他的商业模式的逻辑性非常非常的强。所以，尤其是在谈 Net Zero 这件事情的时候，各位有没有看过说 ，Elon Musk 他真正赚钱的并不是全电动车，而是在碳权这一块，他在美国赚了非常多的钱。也就是我透过我的公司的低碳，所以你要跟我买碳权这件事情，他在美国在这个部分获利非常多。所以这个是 Elon Musk。再往下呢 ，Dyson， 我在Langdon Morris 在台湾的时候，while Langdon Morris was in Taiwan on 19th of March, I also told Langdon, Dyson 过去它是非常技术导向的，但是 Dyson 它现在在英国也有一个 Dyson School、Dyson University， 它在训练学生，绝对也都在思考这个问题。所有的产品创新。When you get into innovation, you need to start from the marketing, and also how big the market can be. 所以在过程当中，当然戴森他本身是技术者，但是当他成功之后，他应该很清楚说，我创新应该要从市场端开始，市场需求在哪边？没有市场需求，你干嘛那么认真的去做创新？没有意义啊！所以刚刚尤其是 Langdon Morris 谈到一个方法叫 Design Thinking。Design Thinking 其实是美国的 Stanford University 以及 IDEO 这两个单位合作发展出来的。Design Thinking 我就不讲了哈。Design Thinking 通常在讲的叫做需求在哪边 ？Where is the market needs？ 第二个叫做 Technology feasibility， 技术可行性。好啊，你有需求啦，接下来技术可行性做得到吗？好，第三个 Business viability， 你技术可行性做得到了，但是你商业行为做得到吗？你能不能获利？你的技术成本非常高，你能够像苹果贾博士 Steve Jobs， 当他在发展 I 系列产品的时候，请问为什么他 I 系列产品它的价格可以卖那么贵？请问为什么？功能特色之外，还有其他什么样的元素 ？Beside function, what are other factors that will affect I series products market size and the price？所以在这个过程当中，到底创新的方法论也有哪些？类似这种图，这个图基本上说实话，我就是从 Langdon Morris 那边学来的哈。发散收敛，发散收敛，发散的过程是靠我们的右脑思维是一个创新思维，左脑是一个逻辑思维在做收敛的工作。所以大概我先分享这2页之后。后面还有1页，我有跟 Langdon Morris 稍微讲过，innovation 精实创新，也就是我们的林诺维新的核心在精实企业跟精实创新。今天我在2代的会里面，我也特别强调说，精实企业绝对是，我不谈，我知道碳盘查怎么做，但是我不想跳下去做，我会着重在减排的部分。为什么？In case you cannot reduce your carbon emission, the only way you have to do is to pay for the carbon tax, pay for the carbon fee, and so on. 所以在这个逻辑之下，精实企业加上精实创新，你如何让你开发的产品的耗能越低越好？这个是在产品开发上。或者是透过设备要你公司减排的时候，就是设备减排很简单，换成变频空调马上减排。但是设备减排这一块，我永远强调它不是长期之计它是短期快速有效，但是毕竟设备会老化，新的设备会推陈出新，所以在减排这个部分，设备减排叫做短期效应，真正中长期效应来自于精实企业。今天我在2代会的活动里面，我特别强调这一页，强调说精实思维其实就是公司治理。Lean thinking, the concepts of lean thinking are basically the business governance fundamentals. 所以这个部分是我们在谈精实思维的重要性。更进一步的谈到所谓的 social responsibility 的部分。其实在 social responsibility 社会责任的部分，人均产值最大化，如何让业务研发、生产技术、生产管理、财务管理、品质管理能够变成是一个系统，而不是台湾大部分的产业叫做各自为政，单位跟单位之间叫做搞不好是互相，那是你家的事情，跟我无关这样一个逻辑。所以在这样子的一个，我们希望把跨单位之间全方位一体化变成是 one team 的概念的时候，消除浪费，尤其是消除 cross function department waste， 消除跨部门浪费，绝对是减排的关键。消除浪费就在减排，消除跨部门浪费更是全世界大部分公司减排的最重要的关键。 当你在消除浪费，你的人均产值也同时变大的时候，你是不是同时你就能够做到照顾员工的这样的一个基本的要件？所以基本上精实企业同时对应到 ESG 这些逻辑。其实为什么我会邀请 Langdon Morris 来看看能不能共同来协助我们台湾的产业来做一些发展哈？我现在就跳到我们的这个问卷啊，还有我们的这个 QR code。那我们现在已经快要9点半了，当然我说实在话，真的 Q&A 才是最重要的部分。我有麻烦 Kurt 来协助引导，后面的 Q&A 的工作，因为我们的 Kurt 他的英文是美国人的英文啊，那他是我们的后台，他刚刚协助大家在引导那个 subtitle 就是字幕的设定的部分的哈，其实就是那个我们的 Kurt 啊，他是美国回来的资讯硕士啊，同时他在资讯领域哈，他是在帮台湾的一些产业。美商公司在台湾的唯一的工程师，唯一的团队啊，在帮忙台湾的美商的一些台湾的美商企业做一些资讯管理的工作啊，所以我在过程当中，我可能就会分享这个问卷。如果有空的，麻烦各位先扫这一份问卷，先填写这个问卷。那在 Kurt Langdon from now on。Kurt will help with the Q&A session, okay?
Yeah, that's great.
Okay, so Kurt, can you start to have the Q&A session? And in the meantime, I will have the screen stay on this page and also this page to invite our friends to join our group, okay? 所以在这个过程当中，我荧幕会停留在这2页。好，让我们的朋友尽量能够加入到我们的团队里面。我们希望把创新系统化创新的这些能量引进到台湾。My last word over here. Maybe 2015 or 2016. World Economic Forum 世界经济论坛有一个报告。One report from World Economic Forum is saying that after 2020, 在2020年之后 the most important skills in business 在事业经营里面最重要的技能力是什么东西？我讲3个哈。第一个能力 ，the first top skill is complex problem solving。Complex problem solving 复杂问题解决能力。Langdon 我也跟 Langdon Morris 学的哈。Langdon Morris 同 Langdon Morris 的语言叫做 wicked problem solving。所以复杂问题到底该如何解？系统问题到底该如何解？好，我今天在2代会我也讲了非常多的系统问题的一些观念。第2个 ，the second skill is critical thinking， 批判式思考。第3个 skill，the third skill is creativity， 创造力。请问我们的教育有在教吗？从学校教育到产业界内部有在教这些吗？所以全世界随着 AI 时代来临，变化速度只有越来越快。所以那个 Kurt 接下来就交给你啊，也就是说。我们希望说大家一边填问卷，一边参与我们的 Q&A 的讨论，绝对非常重要，好不好？来 ，Kurt， 麻烦您。
好，谢谢 Justin 啊。那在我们这个 start 这个 Q&A 之前，我想要就是对今天也加一点点东西，因为这个礼拜跟 Langdon Morris 都有一些信上面的交谈，我觉得他是一个非常 down to earth。然后非常愿意去了解台湾的文化，那我也就是非常期待，如果各位朋友，因为各位朋友有很多也是企业主，会跟我们Innovation 或者是 Langdon Morris 这边有更多的连结。We actually set up the we already went through the 5 questions yesterday with Langdon Morris. So he actually acknowledged the 5 questions here. I'm just gonna help with the reading, and Langdon Morris is gonna answer. and we are gonna take turns if we have more time then you can, if anybody here would like to ask more questions. The first question I have here is, how does the city manage it, and how does the city have a zero emission strategy in the city level, I guess?
Well, so Kurt, that was pretty much what I laid out in the presentation. The net zero city concept says that you need to have an overall plan, and the plan has to address many different levels of concern. So the framework that we use says that you have to look at urban governance, urban design, urban infrastructure, urban economics, and urban culture. And in each of those areas, there are possible initiatives that a city could take. So in order to choose, you're essentially creating an innovation portfolio. And that means deciding on where the greatest needs are going to be and where the greatest benefits going to be for your investment. The answer will depend on where a city is located in the world. So cities in very hot locations will have to focus on protecting their citizens from too much heat. Cities in coastal locations will have to focus on protecting from flooding. I mentioned in my presentation that, by 2200 Miami could be underwater, and it floods almost every month. Well, it's flooding today. So there's flooding today in Miami, happening very, very often. So obviously Miami needs a net zero plan and a plan to protect the city from damage, both from water, from the oceans, and also from storms. Figuring out what needs to be done is an important planning process, and that's what the framework that I described is intended to show.
So from now on, I will release my screen so that you can see our handsome Langdon Morris from this side, from Taiwan, to see Langdon from New York. Okay.
Okay. Thank you for the answer. And I'm just gonna go ahead and read all the continue with the questions and open up to everybody to ask more if there's any more questions. Second question we have is actually in English. So it's how do we make any big city better and yet bigger?
How do we make what better and bigger?
How do we make any city better and yet bigger? I think this is also related to question 1, urban planning, but
yeah.
I think under context of urban zero emissions.
Yeah, well, so when the city comes up with its net zero master plan, then it will be making the city better for sure for everyone. Bigger is a function of economics, so that's one of the elements that I mentioned in the framework. Urban economics is a very interesting challenge, and so cities are discovering that people want to live in a place where there's a beautiful environment. So as Justin mentioned, I was in Taipei recently, and the city is quite beautiful and a very lovely place to visit, and that means that people are attracted to live there. Cities also have to have a lot of culture. They have to have economic opportunities. So many cities are creating innovation incubators in order to support startup companies, in order to lure young people who have important skills. So these are all elements of urban development that are being practiced all over the world. What that means is that cities globally are competing with each other to attract people, to attract companies, and to make a beautiful climate and environment.
I'm just gonna mute the link.
Somebody needs to be muted.
Yeah, 林世堂 can you mute yourself? 林世堂先生，可以那个静音一下吗？
那个系统端可以直接把其他人关静音吧。
All right, I'm gonna mute everybody and then just unmute ourselves. Okay. I hear Langdon saying this is also related to urban design, but personally, I'm also interested if there's any like in the country level, because most of the Western countries has gone through industrial era, and so there's a lot of environmental issues probably before. So, but nowadays everybody's just talking about urban zero emissions. So I guess from a city point of view, there should be different urban planning or strategy for the city or even from the country. I'm just gonna go to question number 3. From an organization level, what's the bottleneck and the new trends for the carbon management for under the context of ESG?
Well, so the challenge is that all these initiatives require investment. And so they have to be looked at as innovation investments that have to return the capital that's invested. The good news is that non-fossil energy is getting cheaper and cheaper, whether it's wind or solar or even other new technologies. So it's a question of prioritizing energy investments above other possibilities. And when a company creates a net zero strategy, often it's very good from a branding perspective. It's also very good from an employee morale perspective. But like any other investment, it has to be looked at critically to make sure that it makes sense in terms of the overall capital available and the overall investment strategy.
All right. That sounds like a big question for me. Or
it is a big question.
Yeah. So question number 4. What are some of the possible or feasible models for ESG models, innovations for a small or a medium-sized organization?
The most important thing for small companies is to engage the entire company in this conversation. So having people aware that it's important and thinking about what are the opportunities to improve environmental performance or improve governance or improve social responsibility. So, you know, as I mentioned, large companies have to deal with these problems in a very different way than small companies. And the most important thing that small companies can do is talk about it, engage people, because people are incredibly creative. They will discover problems and create solutions that owners or leaders or managers had never, ever thought of. So simply expressing an interest or a concern in these areas and inviting employees to think about it, to talk about it, and to propose ideas, that's really where small companies have an opportunity. Now, let me talk a little bit about innovation in small companies, because it's the same situation. Small companies typically don't have the resources that a large company has to pursue innovation. And so we've been talking about the Innovation Master Plan framework, but one of those other books on Amazon that Justin found is a book about innovation for small businesses.
Yes.
And that's the title of that book is The Innovation Formula. And so the purpose of that book is to basically say, if you're a small business and innovation is important for you, and it should be important, then what would you do? And the book identifies 5 areas of focus for small businesses. So the first one is leadership. The second one is agility. The third one is speed, because you're in a competitive market. The fourth one is engagement. And the fifth one is risk management. So that spells an acronym, LASER. So we created a LASER acronym to describe the innovation practices for small businesses. And that's very, very different than large companies. The situation of small and large companies is completely different. So the LASER framework is our suggested tool for how small companies can think about innovation. And in addition to the book, there's a workbook that goes with it if you're interested. And the workbook basically lays out a series of exercises that you can do basically with paper and pencil to think about innovation in your organization if it's a small company.
I like this question because previously we talked about I think most of the Taiwan organizations are small or to medium organizations, but I think in general Taiwanese organizations are pretty adaptive and they're pretty agile, and and sometimes they are also very innovative in the supply chain, making, and also in manufacturers. But you were just talking about how the branding and the innovation is from the, just like Justin was saying, from outside. That's some mindset we probably don't have. So question number 5. We would like to know more some of the zero emission city cases. I think you shared some in your presentation.
Well, I didn't really share a lot of practices, but I mentioned that in the book, we found 113 examples of practices being used in cities around the world. 112 of them were positive, like you should think about this idea for your city, and one of them was negative, like don't do this. It was a bad example. So there's lots and lots of lots of ideas and suggestions. And when I talked about it, I mentioned the framework that we used to think about net zero. So we organized the ideas into 5 categories. One is governance. So how do we govern the city? The next is urban design. So what's the physical structure of the buildings? Third is urban infrastructure. So transportation, energy, waste, resources. Fourth is the urban economy. And fifth is urban culture. So we organized the 113 examples into those 5 categories. So anyone who's interested in net zero for a city would hopefully find that book to be a very good resource for them.
Yes.
Okay, last but not least on the sheet, question 6. What could be the plan B if by 2050 the organization globally would not reach net zero?
Well, so I understand the question, but I think it's important that we realize that 2050 is so far in the future that that date was chosen because it's very far away. Excuse me. People pick 2050 because it's so far in the future that it's too vague. So whether we get there by 2030, 2040, or 2050, you know, the sooner we get there, the better. And if we haven't gotten there by 2050, then that just means we have to keep working at it. But in the meantime, the climate's going to get worse. So the planet's going to get hotter. The ocean's going to get higher. And so we'll be spending a lot of time and a lot of money just protecting ourselves from climate change. The longer we wait, the worse it's going to get. So the goal of the Net Zero City book was to describe how we could do it in 10 years, which was, of course, very ambitious. But 2050 is too late. There'll be much too much damage and suffering between now and 2050 if we wait that long. So I think there's a sense of urgency, and there should be. And the weather patterns are making it very clear that we can't afford to wait. So hopefully by 2050 we'll be there. This is by 2050, Kurt, you'll be just at the point of your career where you got your PhD and you're lecturing around the world to people to help them understand, you know, what we accomplished in the previous 25 years.
I think this is just the way of thinking from Taiwanese maybe business owners, because we like to talk about the case plan B or a worst case scenario, but is this some kind of mindset you would have in innovation in general?
Yeah, so innovation is always about risk, and risk is always about understanding your options and the possibilities. So having a plan B makes a lot of sense. The plan B in terms of climate change is just, you know, we have to do it. There's no choice. It's mandatory.
Yeah.
But it's interesting that you mentioned about plan B in Taiwan, because, you know, Taiwan faces some pretty significant geopolitical challenges. So it's very wise for Taiwanese companies to have a plan B, and that plan B should include either North America or Europe or both, because the situation remains very unsettled, and to have business continuity in a bad situation requires that you have a significant presence elsewhere.
So Kurt, at this moment, 或许是不是用中文跟大家稍微解释一下？这个很重要。
中文啊，Okay, Justin, do you want to do this? I want to kind of summarize what we had for the plan, and then we're gonna open up for everybody to ask questions. Justin, 可以帮我们 summarize 一下
？OK， 其实尤其是刚刚那个 Langdon Morris 在讲的这一段哈，因为我们有朋友问到 Plan B， 其实 Plan B 某种程度的叫做我把它称为叫风险管控好了啦哈。其实刚刚那个Langdon Morris 在讲的意思是说，台湾因为面临到目前全世界都已经逐渐往这个方向在移动啊，这个是一个非常关键的议题。今天在二代会的时候有谈到，地缘政治问题。说实在话，我不认为只是地缘政治问题。刚刚那个 Langdon Morris 他要讲说geopolitical 这个地缘政治问题。那其实我个人认为的，并不是只有地缘政治问题，也不是只有什么贸易战这些问题而已，而是说later on I maybe Langdon Morris Langdon maybe may I ask one question and please reply to it later on. Usually in Taiwan, I don't know whether or not the topic is an important topic in the United States, but in Taiwan, people are saying that the most important topic right now for business is the so-called twin pivot transformation. 台湾叫做双轴转型twin pivot。One pivot, the first pivot is digital transformation. 第一个轴叫做数位化转型。The second pivot is ESG sustainability. 第二轴是 ESG 的永续的议题。How can is it important to combine the twin pivots together, especially from can we apply digital transformation for ESG sustainability? 所以这个议题later on Langdon, can you reply to this topic after I finish some explanation in Chinese? Okay? Okay. 所以刚刚在讲的地缘政治的议题，今天在二代会的时候 the second generation activity today in the daytime， 我们谈到一个话题很重要的是说，其实不是只有贸易战。说真的，一个逻辑很简单，是2011年工业 4.0 这个名词被提出来。On 2011, Germany issued the so-called Industry 4.0 topic。在工业 4.0 这一个主题被推出来之后，逐渐工业 4.0 又变成是所谓的 digital transformation 数位化转型这个议题。在这个议题之下，其实已经宣示了一件事情了。这个也是我一开始我刚刚在讲说代工产业跟设计代工产业未来在哪里，这个问题真的蛮严重的哈。也就是说，当过去欧美国家、日本他们自己不做生产制造。In the past, most European or American companies and also Japanese companies, they don't do too much manufacturing. They have maybe companies in Taiwan or in southeastern China area companies to do manufacturing for them. 问题就来了，当数位化转型之后会发生什么事情？数位化转型，请问直接人力，甚至于一些所谓的管理基础的管理阶层人力，是否就被数位化转型、智慧制造的能力取代掉？当我直接人力大幅度的在消失的过程当中，请问为什么我不能够 Why don't we have our manufacturing company in the European countries so that they can serve customers in the European countries? Why don't we have manufacturing companies in the American continental, so that the manufacturing company can serve the customers in the American continental? 所以这一个趋势应该在2011年工业4.0数位化转型之后是一个非常明显的趋势。所以在这个过程当中，尤其是疫情之后，请问这一个趋势会不会越来越快？这个逻辑真的蛮简单的哈，逻辑简单到说，疫情期间大家意识到一个关键 ，After COVID-19, everybody knows that I'm afraid, hey, I don't have any goods, any products I can sell in my country. 所以所有的人都希望说，最好你的生产制造的系统要离我越近越好，对不对？所以为什么墨西哥变成是 why Mexico becomes the largest importer to the United States？ 墨西哥现在已经变成是美国最大的一个进口国。为什么？其实就是大家已经意识到说，我要赶快去那边布局，因为未来这种区域型的产业链一定会加速形成。所以其实不是只有 geopolitical 这样子的一个 issue 而已，是包含到说，因为科技的转变之后所形成的一个说，我在欧洲做欧洲市场的生意，我在美洲生产制造美洲所需要的一些产品，这样子一种区域型的产业链，在疫情之后应该会加速形成，因为市场端最怕的叫做产品断链，所以很多的因素都在造成一个现象，就是说，请问我们台湾的产业如何因应这一个可能很难逆转的一个趋势？还有包含到地缘竞争，还有地缘战争的可能性的问题。请问我们要不要开始去思考布局？从过去的全球运筹变成是区域型的产业链的一种布局，这样一个逻辑。所以在这个过程当中真的很重要哈。什么叫 Plan B？ What is Plan B？ Where are we going to go to？我们未来我们要到哪边去做生意？我们的整个从我们的研发到我们的生产制造到我们的市场，到底我们未来该如何去布局？这个变成是一个非常关键的议题。Okay, Langdon, please try to deliver your answer to my question. Okay?
Yes, sir. So now we're talking about strategy in the big sense.
Yes.
And from our perspective, there are three big issues globally. One is digital technology. You talked about digital transformation.
Yes. Yes.
So now our focus right now is a concern on a few areas. Number one, artificial intelligence. Number two, advanced semiconductors. Number three, penetration into consumer markets. So a lot of things to talk about in technology. Second one is climate. So that's where ESG comes in because of the environmental aspect. So we have to deal with climate change. And the third one is geopolitics. So obviously you're right in the middle of that in your situation across the strait, as well as the situation in Ukraine right now. So those three challenges are enormous for most enterprises globally, and preparing for the consequences of how that might unfold is really an interesting challenge because we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know what's going to happen with technology. We don't know how much impact AI is going to have on employment. AI could wipe out a lot of jobs, or it could lead to the creation of new jobs. It's just not clear. Climate change could get worse, or it could get incredibly bad if there's another war, obviously. So a lot of reasons to do planning. Very early on in this seminar, Justin mentioned the most recent book that I wrote, which is called Hello Future, The World in 2035. And that was a discussion about what's happening globally and, you know, how we can prepare and how we can achieve what we want to achieve as a society. So a few key takeaways from that are, number one, it's a bad idea to try to predict what's going to happen because there's too much uncertainty, too much volatility. So instead of trying to predict, the most important thing for organizations to do is to prepare for many possibilities. So a few minutes ago, I mentioned about, you know, the situation with China and the situation with the Strait. So it only makes sense for Chinese companies, for Taiwanese companies, to establish a presence, a strong, effective presence in other parts of the world, to insulate yourself from, you know, if there's a bad impact across the Strait. That's obviously a risk and it's an investment, but it's also a growth opportunity. So, you know, the world is looking for innovative products and innovative services and new business models. And the Taiwanese people are historically very creative and very innovative. So bringing your innovations around the world is a good business strategy for growth, and it's also a good business strategy from a Plan B perspective. Otherwise, so that's the planning perspective. Justin, you also mentioned ESG when you asked the question.
Yes.
So obviously the climate questions are related to E, but preparing the organization to deal with change, to cope with change, and to be able to survive difficult problems, that's where the S in social and the G in governance really can be very, very important. So as I said before, engaging people in the organization is a most important strategy. So, you know, joining an organization like Taiwan Innovation in order to educate people, to help them understand the issues in order to increase their ability to make good contributions to the strategy and the operations of the organization. That's also a good Plan B approach, and I would recommend it for everyone.
Yes. Okay. Is there any people still online? There are still 40 people online. So is there anyone who has any questions right now? Because it's 10 o'clock in Taiwan, 10 o'clock at night in Taiwan already. So
well, Justin, let me suggest this.
Yes.
I know it's late. People have been listening to us talk for 2 hours, so
yes.
Thank you very much for staying on the call with us. Justin and I and Kurt are always in contact. You can always ask any question. You know, we can email, we can set up another
yes.
call, or we can set up another online meeting. So I encourage you to think about what we've talked about today. Think about joining the association, and you know, we're friends and colleagues, and we're always in touch. So we're always accessible. So you'll always have the opportunity to ask questions in the future.
Thank you. So can we give Langdon another big applause? Thank you for deliver your speech from New York. 12 hours difference from Taiwan. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Justin. Thank you for inviting me to join you. It's always a pleasure, and I look forward to interacting with you in the future.
Okay, I really hope that we can do something for Taiwan. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Right. Thanks,
okay.
everyone.
Good
night.
See you. Bye bye.
Take care. Bye bye.
Bye. 谢谢大家。Thanks to everyone over there. Thank you. Kurt, thank you. 谢谢你哦 ，Kurt。所以其他的朋友，我们今天活动就到这里了，谢谢各位，谢谢。